The movie opens with a monologue of the protagonist whose name is Brooks Radigan. He aims to be a great personality in the future. His inspirations include his dad, who once was a very famous writer as well. His only purpose is to change the world and bring in a new reality. He has his best friend, Murph, who consistently supports him in everything he does. Murph develops apps and Brooks helps him with it. The two of them work at Subway together. Brooks presents his college essay to the school counselor so that he gives his best shot and gets into a prestigious university. The counselor tells him that if he wants to get into Yale, he has to have a stronger essay and look deep into himself. Brooks agrees and walks out of school. He wants to buy cars and houses like his rich classmates, and he envies them a lot. At home, his dad tells him to go to a nearby college rather than Yale, which is very expensive. He goes to work and meets up with Murph. He asks Murph's ideas about the essay theme, and Murph tells him to write about his mom leaving him when he was just a kid. Brooks is hurt at the memory but brushes it off quickly. Just then, some of his classmates come to the store. One of them, whose name is Reese, talks about how he doesn't want to be his cousin's partner to a dance. He wants to spend the night with his girlfriend instead. He goes on to say how his cousin's dad, that is his uncle, is even paying him to take her. Brooks hears about this and offers to take the girl instead. Reese is shocked to hear this, but Brooks tells him if he gets to borrow Reese's car and he'd get paid, then he would take the girl. Reese agrees and gives him his car. Brooks is over the moon to drive such an expensive car. He tells Murph how he's collecting money excitedly. Murph tells him this is a bad idea, but Brooks doesn't care, thinking that he's just helping out a girl and taking her on a date. He plans to become whatever the girl wants and become her fake date for the night. He gets greeted at the door by a man who seems to be very rich and intellectual. The man invites Brooks inside. Brooks is shocked to see a girl throwing a tantrum. Just then, a woman comes down stressed that her daughter isn't wearing some heels, and instead opting for some boots. Brooks is confused by all this and finally sees a girl wearing combat boots come down. He tries to introduce himself, but she insults him instead. The girl, Celia, jokes with Brooks and they go to the car soon. She's a very headstrong and outspoken girl. As they ride, Celia tells him to drop her off at a bookstore cafe and come pick her up after a couple hours. Brooks is confused and doesn't agree. He insists Celia go to her dance and doesn't budge. Celia scoffs and agrees. They finally go to her high school. Brooks drags her to the dance floor and Celia hesitantly starts dancing. They have fun for a while, until a slow long song starts playing. Celia gets way too awkward, but Brooks pulls her in and they dance. Just then, he spots a really pretty girl and can't help but stare at her. He slightly injures Celia in the process and they stop dancing. Brooks apologizes for his mistake and gets her an ice pack immediately. Just then, the pretty girl from before comes in and checks in on Celia. She introduces herself as Shelby and invites them to a party. Brooks really wants to go, but Celia is against it. Brooks starts liking Shelby but bids her goodbye. He goes on to drop Celia home. When she jokes about how he should start a business being rich girl's chaperone for a night, Brooks takes it seriously and thinks he could make it big like that. Him and Celia start getting along. As she's walking back home, Brooks realizes Celia was never injured and was faking it to get home soon. He tells her how he wanted to go to Shelby's party but couldn't. Celia tells him he wouldn't belong there anyway since it's for snobby, posh kids. She walks into her house irritated. Celia's dad pays her and even gives him a bonus for lasting so long with his daughter. Reese soon comes to pick up his car. Brooks asks him how he afforded such an expensive car since his parents aren't very rich. Reese simply says he hustled to get it. Brooks pledges to hustle as well and get what he wants. The next day, he tries to convince Murph into making an app for him. Murph isn't in on the idea first, but as Brooks explains it to him, Murph agrees, thinking it would just help the both of them. Just then, Murph's crush comes by and he tries to act like he isn't excited. The day goes by and at night, Brooks waits impatiently as Murph handles the code. He finally builds an app which can allow a person to choose what kind of date she wants. It's like a takeout but for a person. Brooks is excited to see it, and thanks Murph, who teases him saying he's a hooker now. But Brooks makes it clear that he wouldn't be intimate with anyway and just act like a chaperone. Murph even builds him an app to track his progress, so he can see how much money he's saved to go to Yale. The next morning, his dad tells him that he got a full-ride scholarship to UConn, which is a public college. Brooks isn't interested in it at all and says he doesn't want to go anywhere but Yale. His dad is disheartened at this and they get into a mild argument. Brooks stalks Shelby and starts to like her even more. Just as he's about to start on his college essay, he gets a request. He goes to an art show as an art nerd and the girl is impressed. The app soon skyrockets and he starts to get countless requests. He goes to tennis practices and helps girls with dating advice. He always researches and acts the part to really stand out. He goes to parties, dance practices, and pretty much everything. His phone continues to blow up with requests from girls to take them out. He starts to earn a lot of money as well and is pretty positive that he's going to Yale. One morning, he gets a call from Celia apologizing for her behavior. She tells him she needs him again to make her crush jealous. She adds that she wants him to go to Shelby's house party and Brooks instantly says yes. He tells her about his app and she explains the whole plan to him. That night, they arrive at Shelby's house, which is massive. They enter the party and Shelby greets them. Brooks is about to tell Shelby where he lives, but Celia lies, saying Brooks is a very rich guy who lives in an immensely wealthy neighborhood. Shelby sees her dad flirting with some of her friends and quickly goes to berate him. When Brooks asks Celia why she lied, Celia retorts, saying if he's trying to impress Shelby, he has to do that. At that moment, they see Celia's crush, Franklin. Celia tries to run away, but Brooks drags her and initiates a conversation with Franklin. Celia and Franklin soon start talking and Brooks leaves, satisfied. Shelby starts talking to Brooks as well and he's elated. Shelby is fully convinced that Brooks is very rich and he doesn't deny it. He gets back to Celia with ice cream and she excitedly tells him that she and Franklin are going on a date. Brooks is thrilled. They plan on having a public, fake breakup at another party, so Celia can date Franklin and Brooks can get Shelby's sympathy. Brooks starts talking about how he wants Shelby and go to Yale. Celia comments on it, saying he's only running after external happiness instead of accepting himself for how and who he is. Celia then tells them that her dad knows the president of Yale and would speak to him for Brooks. Brooks is grateful and thanks her a lot. At work the next day, Murph seems to be distressed. Brooks asks him about it, to which he replies that they're very distant now and speak less. Brooks realizes this and promises to spend time with Murph very soon. The next day, Brooks goes to a rich girl's house pretending to be a douche, when Celia calls him saying that she set up a meeting for him with the Dean of Undergraduate Admissions at Yale. Brooks is super excited to meet the Dean and give his first impression. Celia meets Brooks and urges him to not be so uptight and fake to get in. He is extremely nervous and meets the Dean. He has done a full research on the Dean, and when the Dean asks Brooks to talk about himself, he brings up all the things that the Dean personally loves. He lies about being a beekeeper, which catches the Dean's attention. The Dean is very impressed by Brooks, but Celia overhears their conversation. When asked about it, Brooks tells her about the lie and Celia is furious. She calls him out on lying and not telling what he does now. Brooks calls Celia a hypocrite as well as she's trying to be fake for Franklin. Celia storms out angrily. There's an awkward silence in the car, but then Celia agrees that she's a hypocrite because she's scared to show who she truly is. Brooks consoles her and tells her she's confident and that's all that matters. Brooks, Celia and Murph have dinner at a restaurant together. As Brooks goes to pay, Murph tells her about how Brooks' mom is married to a rich pediatrician and has a very happy family. She doesn't care about Brooks, which hurts him a lot but doesn't show it. Celia is upset to hear about this. After dinner, Celia plans to go on her date with Franklin. Murph and Brooks had plans together, but Brooks gets a request and decides to take it instead. Murph is hurt by this but understands Brooks' desperation to go to Yale. Brooks goes to this fake date and Celia meets Franklin, who drones about coffee and music. Celia is a little uninterested but continues listening when Franklin tells her that Celia and Brooks are very similar. Celia brushes it off and tells him that they're breaking up soon. Franklin finally lets out the fact that he's a vandal and paints images on walls at night, which immediately weirds her out. The next day, Brooks goes on and on about his fake date, but Murph doesn't listen. Instead, he tells Brooks how he was all alone and walks away. Brooks feels bad but doesn't seem to care. Later that day, Brooks calls Celia and talks about their breakup plan, but Celia doesn't want that to happen. She has started liking Brooks. On the day of the party, Celia dresses up and wears makeup to impress Brooks, but he doesn't even look at her. Instead, he is planning how to break up. He finally glances at Celia and compliments her, but doesn't have any feelings for her. He starts explaining the whole plan to her once again. They start to get their act up, but Brooks hits some nerves and starts to make really insensitive comments about Celia. Celia gets really hurt and slaps him. She walks away and just then, Shelby comes up. She consoles Brooks and they make out. She asks him out to her formal dance and Brooks instantly agrees. When he comes to tell Murph about this at work, he is shocked to find someone else instead of Murph. Murph was really hurt and told his coworker that Brooks is a selfish prick, which is why he's switching shifts. Brooks is confused and hurt but ensures he'll work this out. On a request, Brooks goes on a walk with an old lady. She tells him how she used to go on walks with her husband all the time, but after he passed away, she felt lonely. She goes on to tell him how you know when you've found the right one. She adds that the one you're most comfortable with and love being around is the one you're meant to be with. Brooks realizes this and texts Celia, but she ignores him after what he's done. Celia is done with Franklin as well and decides to go to the formal dance alone. At the night of the formal dance, Brooks picks up Shelby and they go to an expensive restaurant. Shelby talks to him about her plans and Brooks realizes that they're two completely different people. They can't even strike up a conversation properly. They go to the formal dance and Celia is there. Shelby insults her but Brooks is mesmerized by Celia. Just then, Brooks meets a girl who wants his advice. She talks about his app and Shelby confronts him. Brooks confesses about how he's poor and has the app to help him get to Yale. Shelby is disappointed and walks away, but Brooks isn't sad. He realizes the mistakes he had done and goes to Celia. They talk about their crushes for a while who weren't really their type. Celia confesses that she likes Brooks but isn't his backup. Brooks understands and goes back home disappointed. His dad asks what's wrong and he tells him everything. He tells his dad how he doesn't even know who he is. His dad gives him some really great advice. Brooks finally figures out what he actually should be doing. He declines the request that he gets along the way. The next morning, Brooks confesses everything and they salvage their friendship. Murph decides to finally ask his crush out. Brooks is really happy with where he is now. He looks at the money he's saved up and starts on his essay once again. He calls Celia and they meet up at a cafe. He tells her that he didn't apply to Yale and accepted UConn's offer since he doesn't want to fake being anyone. He instead hands Celia a letter expressing his feelings. He tells her how he's only himself when he's with her. He asks her out in the letter and goes home to give her time to think. Brooks' dad also gets a great gig. Just then, he gets a request in his app and he quickly declines. But he continues getting them. He realizes what's going on and opens the door to see Celia. She apologizes for slapping him and asks him out to go to another formal dance. Brooks hesitates but finally agrees. Celia drives him to his workplace instead and is stunned to see Murph and his crush there. It's just the four of them. Murph tells him that he's going to UConn too. Celia accepts Brooks and he couldn't be happier. They kiss and spend the night together, starting a new chapter of their life.